no hair. It's gone. Okay. Let's just fucking get that out of the way. So, been thinking a lot. Sometimes I think about music. Occasionally I make music. Most of the time I just think about it despite my better judgment. This might be obvious to some people, or it might be super interesting and not obvious to some people. I would argue the most important aspect of music, at least in like the recent time, is timbre, like how a thing sounds. Melody is important, but if you took the melody of lo-fi hip-hop beats to study/relax to and arranged it for a very talented rock band, it would still kind of suck, because it's the feel, it's the sound of the music that matters. And I think that unless you're a musician, unless you're like a nerd, a music fuck, that feel of how the thing is more important than what they're playing. Because like a piano is just a piano, but there's a million different ways to make the piano sound a certain way. This would have been really smart if I was at home with music stuff. Maybe I'll cut it in. So, a normal piano sounds like this, but you can make a spooky piano that sounds like this, or like, I don't know, a cutesy E piano that sounds like this. There's a whole bunch of different ways to play one single note. If you really wanted to, you could even do this. And that feel, the way the instrument is in the present time, I think is more important than even what they're playing. And I don't think that used to be the case. Or you're a full orchestra and you've got these specific sounds and you can use different sounds from these different instruments, but that's really as far as you can go with that. And a lot of orchestral arrangement was a combination of, melody, harmony, rhythm, and then timbre to an extent, because if you write a melody on the oboe, it's going to sound different than if you write it on the violin or the viola. But of course, they didn't have unlimited possibilities like we do, and that's the thing. And you can instantly bring out different emotions in people just by the sound of the instrument. You play one note, and if it sounds washy and lo-fi, it's gonna feel nostalgic. And you hear one single fucking note, and you're like, oh, I feel nostalgic. That's not because of the melody, right? That's just because of the way the instrument sounds, the timbre. And we, right now, have the technology to make anything like sound like fucking anything, right? Like, synths can be whatever, but then on top of that, we've got sample libraries, but then we have pre-processed sample libraries. Oh. Someone came and bothered me at work, where I work. That shouldn't be allowed. So my argument for this is what's more important is how the thing sounds compared to what the thing is doing. What the thing is doing, the melody, is of course important for the music that we're talking about, but how it sounds seems to be increasingly more important. Take someone like The Weeknd, right? You listen to that and it sounds 80s, right? And that wasn't an accident. That's not just because that's the only synth he can afford, right? He can make it sound like whatever the hell he wants. He can make it sound like fucking Chromatica by Lady Gaga. Could, but that's not the sound, right? Because his music evokes a certain thing. And for people like me and people who listen to metal, the focus is more on the technicality or the musicianship. This type of thing not necessarily is lost on people like that, but you go into it with a different goal than somebody who just likes music but doesn't really know anything about it, right? Because they might like certain aspects of something that's insanely musical, but then something that we deem as complete musical garbage, they'd still like because it's about the feel. And so your very first introduction to a piece of music is that, because when you listen to a song, even after one time, you need to listen to it at least once to know the melody, right? And decide if it's good or not. But the timbre, the way that the thing sounds, that's instant. As soon as you hear it, you have an emotional reaction to it. Whether you like it or not, it makes you think of something. Whether that's, this sounds like a thing, you know? If you've got like a square wave synth, like doing octaves on a synthesizer, that's going to sound like video games. Like, whether it is or not, that's how it's going to sound. That's how it's going to feel. You know, and there could be some crazy shit like the piano sample that I added in before that's just like, well, whatever the hell, that just sounds weird. And it's like, yes, because there's no predetermined thing for your brain to fill in when you hear that one. But there are tons of it, and I feel like that's what non-music people look for. And you'll notice increasingly more in my own music, because this is the reason I'm thinking about it. I'm not just giving a very ill-prepared lecture about this for no reason. It's because the new Voicide stuff, that's really my focus. Is the material is about like childhood trauma and things like that. Nostalgic but dark. And so before I even start the lyrics, before I even start the melodies, I'm going for nostalgic but dark in the synth, the way it sounds, the way it feels, even if it's just one fucking note like I was doing earlier. Because that's what people cling to before anything else. That's like your initial impression. And that whole idea is interesting because it seems very lost in metal to an extent. Of course, I've talked before about, like, you know, there's signature guitar tones and signature drum sounds, and you hear that and you go, oh, that's this thing, right? You can even tell a genre before they start playing riffs by the sound of the guitars. And that's fine, but it's a very, very different thing. Normal non-music people, which for better or for worse, which for better or for worse is going to be most people listening to music, they just like what they like. And a lot of the times they don't notice production. I mean, some people do. Like, if it sounds like absolute ass, they're going to be like, oh, that's kind of weird. But you will find increasingly people who I associate with don't get why Billie Eilish is so popular, because there's nothing going on. It's like, right, musically, because it's really minimal, but you have to understand, to people like that, they're not listening for musicianship. They're not listening for fucking 4-part harmonies and that shit, because it's not going to be there. Because that's not, she's selling vibes, man, to sound awkwardly hip. And there's proof that people don't really care about production when you look at it. Like, yeah, Billie Eilish is a good one. Not that the production's bad, but it's just like, it's so muffled, it's so minimal, it's so small. But like that Molchat Doma band that, like, I see everyone fucking talking about, and it's like, their production sounds like trash on purpose. I'm pretty sure that they're using a real tape machine and they're just slamming that shit. But it's just like, everything is like warbly. There's no high end, there's no low end. It's like, but that has a feel, and clearly people who are listening to it aren't going, wow, the production sucks. In fact, one person I know who runs a studio and he loves it, and it's like, clearly the reason people like it isn't because of the production. And so inversely, the reason people don't like certain music isn't because of the production, right? It's just because it's not that type of feel. And, you know, I've had to come to terms more and more with the idea that that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to market feel and vibe. Yeah, this is an ongoing journey, but this was just sort of my thought for the day, is that right now that's the most important thing. I think melody is close. I think harmony less so. People like when they hear harmonies, but they don't know that they like when they hear harmonies. But they definitely know whether they do or don't like a specific sound or feel that's immediately evoked. One interesting addendum to this is first wave Norwegian black metal and what eventually became the thousands of shitty ripoff bands of first wave Norwegian black metal. Because, like, Transylvanian Hunger by Dark Throne, even if it's not technical, even if the recording sounds like absolute trash garbage, it has the feel, and, like, you can't say it doesn't. Except, well, people who like that sort of thing, they get it. I think the metal community at large kind of doesn't get it, and I think it ties into this exact thing. That you hear it, and it's like, wow, this was recorded on a Fisher-Price tape recorder. That's the insert meme. This is the meme. Congratulations. And it sounds like shit, and to top it off, they're not even really playing anything impressive. That's the counter argument, right? To like normal people who listen to like melodic death metal, normal death metal, metalcore, what have you. It's like, wow, I'm used to being able to hear the instruments. But from the side of that musical movement, it's like, right, these genres existed, and this is a rebellion of that. Fuck your production, fuck your flashy technicality shit. We're just playing stuff, and it still delivers on the front of how it feels. Not to say it's not technical, but, baseline metal musicianship. I'm sure I've talked about that. But what's interesting, what I don't necessarily have an answer for, is like, okay, but there are still bands doing that. Now, some of them, it's like, okay, you go to a studio and you pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to make a record that sounds like shit on purpose. I think the vibe's not going to be there, right? But there have to be people who are just doing Darkthrone and early Gorgoroth worship and actually recording on a garbage hardware. And I don't even know about them, so clearly they're not doing too well. And I'm not sure why that is. Maybe metal isn't there yet, because right now, so like, I listened to Spirit Box yesterday by accident, and I noticed, at first I was like, why are these guitars, they're not like lining up with the drums, they're not like palm muting the way that I would expect. And then I realized they're longer because the cutoff, the physical DAW editing, is on beat, like perfectly. It's quantized. So like the gating of the guitars, do I sound knowledgeable? Like the guitar gate is obviously on the downbeat, but then it's also timed with the guitar cutoff. So instead of like ding, ding, like ding, 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 and it's like, and then that is doing a polyrhythm with the drums, and it's like, holy fucking shit, this is robot music. And how much further can this go before there's a rebellion, much in the same way that we saw grunge come out of them getting annoyed with hair metal and all the flashiness and all the stupid, dumb bullshit. When is metal going to finally turn around and be like, okay, we don't like the super processed, genty stuff anymore. Now we like shitty, noisy stuff. Maybe that will be when the shitty 90s black metal guys, who are still around today, not those bands, because they've stopped playing that because they moved on. But like, the Basement Dwellers, still playing first wave Norwegian black metal from the 90s, on shitty garbage gear. Maybe soon it will be their time. I'm rooting for them, personally. I'm not going to make that because I like when things sound good, but, and it ain't broke. Just listen to Darkthrone. But anyway, that's an additional bonus musing because this video is almost going to be under 10 minutes, LOL.